You're staring at it, the wooden tub. It's sitting in the corner like a guilty secret, half forgotten, fully stained, and somehow always damp. You're not sure when it was last emptied, but you're sure you're not the first to use it, or the second, maybe not even the seventh. The water inside is the color of old soup. Something's floating in it. You pray it's straw. You know it's not. This is bath night. Not your bath night, mind you. The bath night. The one night a week, or month, or season, when someone in the household gets to splash around in this wooden cauldron of shared decisions and questionable hygiene. And tonight, it's your turn. Lucky you. They didn't call it dirty water back then. It was just water. And if you warmed it first, well, now you were royalty. You toss in a handful of herbs because your gran swore they cleansed the soul. You're pretty sure they just masked the smell of feet. The room is smoky, not, oops, I burnt the toast. Smoky. No, this is thick, permanent, chimney never met a draft, kind of smoky. It clings to your hair. It makes your eyes weep. You could scrub your skin raw in this bath, but the smoke will still win. The tub is older than you. It groans when you pour the water in, like it knows what's coming. Someone once tried to patch a crack in its side with melted tallow. That went about how you'd expect. A little grease on the floor, a little more on your backside. You undress quickly. The air is not warm. It's peasant winter chill, the kind that makes you question every decision that led you to this exact moment. The wooden floor feels like cold teeth under your bare soles. Somewhere, a mouse watches, judging, and then you step in. It's not the heat. That would have been nice. It's the temperature of betrayal. Warm on top, freezing at the bottom. Your toes immediately regret everything. You lower yourself slowly, pretending you're brave, pretending you're not sitting in a broth of everyone you know. You scrub, or try to. The old cloth you're using is more whole than fabric. You find bits of hay in your hair. Your knees are dirty even underwater. You do your best, but let's be honest, it's more of a polite suggestion than a cleansing ritual. Someone knocks. You almost done in there? Of course you're not, but you have 15 minutes before it's someone else's turn, because time is rationed like firewood and hope. The next bather is already standing outside the door with a towel and a look of mild dread. You quickly splash your face, avoiding eye contact with the water. A small insect swims by. You choose not to react. You're stronger than that. You step out, wrap yourself in a towel that's only slightly less damp than you are, and sit near the hearth. It smells like burning moss and wet shoes. You dry off slowly, watching the next person step into the same bathwater you just escaped from. It's a ritual, a family tradition, a survival technique, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't about luxury. It was about not freezing solid and maybe removing a layer of farm. Back then, hygiene wasn't about freshness. It was about not dying. You didn't bathe because you wanted to sparkle. You bathed because sometimes it kept the lice guessing. Barely. And that tub? It stayed. Season after season. No one dared clean it properly. Why would they? What if it fell apart? Then you'd have to use the river. Again. In February. So instead, they scraped it sometimes. Threw in mint or lavender if they were feeling festive, but mostly they just accepted it, the same way they accepted fleas and spoiled bread, and the fact that your cousin might cough for 3 winters and still not die, but also might. Bath night wasn't fun. It wasn't cute. It was more like laundry for your skin, necessary, tedious, and slightly suspicious. Some households had one tub for the whole family, others shared with neighbors. You'd make polite conversation while pretending you weren't sitting in their elbow grease. That's called bonding. And no, soap wasn't bubbly and floral. It was mostly fat, fat and ash. And it worked. Kind of if you ignored the fact that your hands would smell like boiled bacon for days. Every so often, someone would suggest cleaning the tub properly, really scrubbing it, emptying it fully, maybe even drying it. But then someone else would say, "It's holding water just fine, isn't it?" And that would be that. Why ruin a perfectly moldy balance? The years passed. The tub stayed. Generations sat in it, cursed at it, occasionally thanked it. And then, one day, it was gone. Not burned, not broken, just replaced by something ceramic, something shiny, something that didn't smell like 20 years of decision fatigue. It ended up in a museum. That tub, the one you never cleaned, the one that witnessed your childhood winters and your cousin's mysterious rash. Now, behind glass, admired, labeled medieval bathing artifact. People walk by it now, sipping coffees with cinnamon and almond milk. They wrinkle their noses and say, "You." And the tub, if it had feelings, would probably laugh, because they never knew what it meant to sit inside it and feel, for a brief, sloshy moment, slightly clean, or at least less filthy than the day before. It wasn't comfort, but it was life, and somehow it was enough. You're standing in a royal hall. The chandeliers are grand. The robes are embroidered with gold. The nobles are lined up, powdered, perfumed, and pretending not to gag, because His Majesty has entered, and he stinks. Not like a "he's been riding all day" kind of stink. This is historical, mythical, a smell with presence. It arrives before he does. It lingers long after. It has its own politics. You can't mention it. Of course not. He's the king. You can only cough into your silk sleeve and pray for a strong breeze. But the truth is, everyone knows. His servants know. His barber knows. The court physician tried to know and promptly fainted. Even the horses look offended. The king, bless him, believes he smells like strength, like leadership, like divine right, mixed with damp wool and 12 types of regret. The royal bath, more symbolic than functional, a thing of marble, rarely filled. Maybe once a season, when the moon is in the right mood. He's been advised to bathe. He nodded, then didn't. He prefers oils, thick, musky, imported from lands no one can point to on a map. He rubs them into his chest, his beard, his armpits. He thinks it masks the problem. It doesn't. It fights the problem and loses. Now imagine the royal court, gilded walls, tapestries of conquest, and an invisible fog of something between fermented cheese and battlefield. When you dine with him, the food tastes brave. The roasted goose arrives with a side of existential dread. Wine helps, until it doesn't. Nobles fake coughs just to exit early. My lord, I fear consumption. Go rest, brave knight, the king says. I'll sweat for the both of us. One poet tried to immortalize his scent in verse, died halfway through the sonnet. This might all be funny if it weren't a genuine problem. You see, the king is meeting foreign dignitaries. They arrive with gifts. They leave with migraines. One envoy from Florence said it best: "We respect your power, but we do not wish to smell it." And so the crisis begins. Quietly, behind embroidered curtains, a plan is formed. Not to offend the king, not to depose him, just to clean him. They try everything. A new, blessed water is created. Smells like thyme and hope. Doesn't work. A special sponge, soaked in vinegar and prayers, is introduced. He calls it unmanly. At one point, someone suggests airing out the throne room with sacks of lavender and open windows. The windows are painted shut. Finally, they resort to the ultimate scheme: convince the king that bathing is a holy ritual, sacred, masculine, warrior like. He's intrigued. The bishop is bribed to confirm it. A monk is found who once bathed in a river and survived. The king agrees. The court gathers. Trumpets sound. The bath is filled. The people hold their breath. In more ways than one, he steps in, slowly, nobly. Water ripples. Dust weeps from his calves. The bathwater changes color. A servant faints. But he's clean, for the first time in perhaps years. And the palace, it rejoices. Air smells like forgiveness. Curtains sway freely again. The royal dog stops hiding. No one says it aloud, of course, but the kingdom is healing, one soap bubble at a time. He still doesn't like it. Complains the water steals his essence, but he agrees to do it twice a year. A compromise. And so history moves forward. With cleaner air and lighter courtiers, it wasn't just about smell. It was about survival, dignity, the right to breathe. It wasn't comfort, but it was, finally, a solution. And somehow, that was enough. You're 16, and your job is to wake the king. Not with a trumpet, not with breakfast, with a cloth, dipped in rosewater, held gently, but firmly, over your nose. Because the stench is not just royal, it's epic. You are the chambermaid, and this is your battlefield. The king sleeps like a log, a very sweaty, snoring, cheese-scented log, wrapped in velvet sheets that haven't been changed since the last lunar eclipse. You tiptoe in each morning, carrying a bucket, a rag, and the hope that today will not be the day you pass out. The bedchamber smells like power, yes, but also like onions, horse grease, and sin. You have memorized the floorboards that creak. You have also memorized how to breathe through your mouth without choking. There is no glamour in this job, no pearls, no lace, just stains. You don't even ask what some of them are anymore. The pillowcase is damp, always. The air is thick. His Majesty doesn't bathe. Not really. He dabs. He powders. Sometimes he lets a page boy throw herbs at him like he's a roast goose. But real soap, real water, that's your fantasy. And yet, you stay. Not just because the pay is decent, if you're lucky, or because your mother says it's better than the gutter. You stay because you're the only one who can do it. The others have fled. One vomited on the silk drapes. Another developed a permanent twitch in her left eye. One simply vanished after muttering something about a living smell. You don't complain. You hum softly, even when wiping down the royal thighs. You keep your head low, but deep down, you're a little proud. Proud that you can survive what most cannot. Every week, you sneak in dried lavender and tuck it into the bedposts. He never notices. Every month, you find a new excuse to leave a bowl of lemon peel near the fire. Decoration, you say. He grunts. But one day, you go too far. You suggest, gently, that perhaps His Majesty might enjoy a hot soak. For the joints, you say. The people say warm water strengthens the limbs. He pauses, looks at you. The room falls silent. You think I stink? He asks. This is it. You're done. You're about to be flung into the moat, nose first. But you don't flinch. You bow. No, sire. I think you deserve the luxury others fear. A long silence. Then a grunt, a nod, a murmur. Prepare it. And you do. You fetch the oils. You draw the water. You burn rosemary until the whole chamber smells like a forest apology. He bathes, briefly, grumbling, but he bathes, and for the first time, the chamber doesn't feel like a punishment. The velvet doesn't smell like feet. The air doesn't fight your lungs. No one thanks you. But the cook sends you extra bread. The dog starts sleeping near the door again. And you get to breathe. You risked your nose. You risked your life. And somehow, you made history just a little less smelly. You're squatting by a fire that barely qualifies as one. The wind howls through the cracks in the wooden walls. The pot trembles on 3 unsteady stones, and you're praying the water boils before you turn into an icicle with chores. Boiling water, the simple kind that comes out of a tap these days, was once a full body mission. First, you had to find the water, then carry it, then hope it didn't slosh out of the bucket while crossing a goat path that doubled as your front yard, then find wood, then light a fire with damp twigs and a prayer, then wait. If it boiled, you were winning. That steam rising, that was status, comfort, warmth, power. And what were you boiling it for? Bathing? Huh, that was cute. No, this water was for softening porridge, or melting lard, or occasionally, if your soul was feeling rebellious, cleaning yourself, but only if no one saw. Because if you added soap to it, well, congratulations, you are now a suspect in the local witch hunt. Soap wasn't a neat little bar with lavender and oat milk. It was a lumpy, homemade mixture of animal fat and ashes. And if you were lucky, it didn't remove a layer of skin. People didn't trust soap. It bubbled. It smelled funny. It looked like something you'd feed to the pigs if the pigs were rude. And it worked, which made it worse. If your hands were suddenly soft, or your apron looked mysteriously whiter than everyone else's, people noticed. She must be hiding something. It's unnatural. She used soap, Martha, on a Tuesday. Whispers turned into rumors, and in a time when women were blamed for storms and cows not producing milk, a little cleanliness could be suspiciously close to sorcery. So most people didn't bother. You'd splash cold water on your face. Rub it dry with whatever wasn't frozen, and call it a day. Hair? Braided, covered, forgotten. Hands? Browned with dirt and work, permanently. Feet? If they didn't fall off, they were considered clean. But every once in a while, someone risked it, boiled the water, hid a lump of soap in a rag, scrubbed under moonlight, not for beauty, but for a tiny flicker of dignity. And for that brief moment, their skin remembered what it was like to not be coated in soot, soil, and shame. No one saw, no one asked. But the next day, when they walked into the market with slightly less grime on their necks, someone always noticed. And if you were unlucky, that someone had a pitchfork. So, yes, boiling water was a luxury, and soap, witchcraft. But oh, what magic it was. You're the fire boy, not the blacksmith's apprentice, not the stable lad. No, your job is simpler and far crueler. You make sure the king's bath water is hot, which means you don't sleep, because if His Royal Majesty wakes up tomorrow and declares, I feel like a bath, you'd better already have been heating that water for at least 6 hours, preferably 12, maybe more, if he wants to soak his knees, which he always does. And you know how many bathtubs there are in the castle? One, just one. And it's not porcelain, it's not shiny. It's a giant metal cauldron that looks like it was stolen from a battlefield kitchen. It takes forever to fill. First, you run to the well, in the cold, with a bucket, then another, and another. You don't count how many. You just know that by the time the tub is full, you can no longer feel your spine. Then comes the fire. Oh, the glorious, temperamental fire. It lives beneath the tub in a soot-caked chamber that smokes more than it burns. You stoke it with wood that's damp, always damp, somehow even in summer. You curse the logs, you curse the wind, you curse your life. And then you wait, because this isn't modern plumbing. There's no dial, no hot tap. There's only boiling inferno or cold enough to end a dynasty. You have to watch the steam, smell the air, listen to the hiss of metal, all while making sure the tub doesn't explode. Yes, that's a real thing. Once, it did. Sir Godfrey's bath turned into a royal stew. He still walks with a limp, and don't even think about adding herbs or oils without permission. Last time someone tried lavender, the queen screamed for 3 hours because it reminded her of her dead parrot. So you keep it plain, just heat and hope. By the time the bath is ready, the water has gone from scalding to lukewarm to it'll do. You wave down a servant. They send in 3 more to carry the king's linens. Someone sprinkles crushed rose petals in as a gesture. The fire is still burning. You're still sweating. Then comes the moment. Trumpets, cloaks, a man with a towel. The king arrives in silk underthings and a scowl. He dips a toe, grunts, sits, and complains. Too cold, too hot. Why does it smell like onions? You don't know, but you suspect the cook is drying shallots in the chimney again. He soaks for 8 minutes, 8, then rises like some sort of damp phoenix. He's dried, robed, and escorted away. He doesn't thank you. He never does. And then you empty the tub with a wooden bowl, one scoop at a time, back to the well. because the water can't stay. It attracts flies, and worse, rats with ambition. You crawl into bed, barely human, knowing full well he might ask for another bath tomorrow. And if he does, you'd better start the fire yesterday. You're walking through the village square, trying not to breathe too deeply, not because of superstition, not because of a bad meal at the tavern, because something's in the air. It's not just foul, it's foreboding, and everyone smells it. The butcher swears the pigs turned up their noses. The priest has started burning incense, like he's trying to smoke out the devil himself. Even the children, usually too busy chasing each other barefoot and snot-nosed, have gone quiet because before the plague came knocking, it sent a messenger, and that messenger was smell. It crept in like fog, a thick, oily stink that wrapped itself around doorways and clung to your clothes. You'd leave your house smelling of wood smoke and garlic and return with something else on you. The old called it the death wind. The young called it normal, which was somehow worse because, let's be honest, medieval life already smelled like a compost pile having a nervous breakdown. You had animals in your house, human waste in your alley, and someone boiling cabbage at all hours of the day. But this was different. It had a sharpness to it, like iron and mildew had decided to throw a party in your nose, and it always showed up before the dying began. First, the rats ran, not in hordes, just quietly, with purpose, like they knew something you didn't. Then the baker's apprentice fell ill. No one noticed at first. He was pale anyway. But then the boils came, then the moaning, then the silence. You tried herbs, you tried prayers, you tried that one weird neighbor's pigeon to the armpit trick. Nothing worked. So you stuffed dried flowers in your pockets. You hung garlic from every beam. You rubbed vinegar behind your ears and hoped your nose would stop working. But the smell always won. It slipped through cracks, through shutters, through sealed lips and whispered hopes, and the people began to fall, one by one, then by dozens, then by names no one dared say aloud. The gravedigger started digging without waiting for orders. The priests worked in shifts, and the bell, that awful, hollow bell, rang more than it rested. Every street began to reek of fear and rot, and still people clung to scents. Perfume if you were rich, parsley if you were desperate, a hot iron held under your nose if you were already halfway to panic. Some said the smell was the plague, that it traveled through the air, invisible and vengeful, that if you smelled it long enough, it crawled into your lungs and made a home. So people fled, not from the death they could see, but from the odor that warned them it was coming. And those who stayed, they scrubbed, they burned, they prayed, but deep down they knew. When the air changed, it meant the world was about to. The plague was coming, and so was the smell. You're holding a steaming pitcher of rose water in one hand and a bar of imported soap in the other, and the queen is flat on the floor because this was too much luxury, too fast. To be fair, she hadn't bathed in 3 weeks, which, in royal terms, is pretty average. You're lucky if she even lets you change the sheets more than once a month. But today was royal cleansing day, as declared by the court physician after noticing the queen's perfume had stopped working. The tub was ready. It had taken all morning, 5 servants, 3 arguments, and 1 near decapitation, involving a low door frame and a tall bucket boy. The copper tub gleamed like a trophy. The water, hot enough to scare away small sins. You'd even sprinkled a few lavender buds on top, because that's what the Florentines did, apparently. The room smelled like someone had slapped a herb garden and set fire to a church candle. But Her Majesty had never seen anything like it. You opened the door with a practiced bow, said something soft like, "Your bath awaits, my lady," and the queen just crumpled like a shocked doily. She went down in slow motion, one gloved hand to her forehead, a delicate gasp, a whispered, "Oh," then silence. You didn't scream. You didn't even blink. You just looked at the nearest maid and said, "Catch her." Too late. And so, now the queen of this entire muddy kingdom is unconscious on a rug that cost more than your entire village. Meanwhile, the bath is still perfect. Steam curls up like ghostly ribbons. A single droplet rolls dramatically down the rim of the tub. The soap waits patiently. You swear you saw it wink. It's not the first time this has happened. Royal nerves are delicate, especially around things like hot water. After all, most nobles still believe that too much bathing can loosen the organs, that the skin is a holy barrier, and washing it too much invites demons, or worse, emotions. But here's the truth. The queen didn't faint from fear. She fainted from possibility, because for a brief, glorious moment, she saw what comfort could be. She saw a bath that wasn't tepid, wasn't gritty, and didn't smell like her cousin's foot ointment. She saw heat. She saw calm. And her 14th century brain just shut down. The physician is called. He enters dramatically, holding a bag of herbs and an attitude. He waves something under her nose, possibly a dried eel. She stirs, moans, blinks once. You stand quietly in the corner, soap still in hand. She is weak, he declares, overcome by air too perfumed. Remove the tub. You want to scream. Instead, you bow. The water is still warm. The lavender still floats. But the queen is led away, dazed, muttering something about butterflies. You stay behind and drain the bath, slowly, regretfully, because you know what nearly happened. A queen almost felt peace. Almost. But the tub was ready, and maybe next time, she will be too. You're sitting by the hearth, staring at a chipped wooden bucket of lukewarm water. You haven't bathed in weeks, maybe months. And honestly, you're not sure you should, because everyone says the same thing. Water opens the body, and when the body opens, demons walk in. It sounds ridiculous now, but back then, it was gospel. Warm water was dangerous, inviting, too inviting. It opened your pores, they said. And what else could slip in through an open pore but a demon with bad timing and worse intentions? So you stayed dry, not because you didn't want to bathe, but because you didn't want to wake up possessed. Or worse, not wake up at all. Old Marta, from 2 cottages over, bathed on a warm spring morning. By supper, she was coughing black, gone by nightfall. The midwife whispered. She was too clean. You started rubbing herbs on your arms after that, not washing, just rubbing, enough to smell alive, not enough to attract spirits. Children were told early cleanliness is next to trouble. They'd dip a rag in cold water and pat their faces like it was a risky game. Never the chest, never the back. That's where the evil got in easiest, apparently. And then the plague came, and guess what else walked in? Death. Not subtle, not slow, not sniffing around your windows, just in. People dropped like flies, and the ones who smelled the worst sometimes went first, sometimes last. No one really knew. So the same people who warned against bathing started boiling rosemary, hanging linen in the wind, pouring vinegar in basins like it was holy water. Because now, smell wasn't just an offense, it was a risk. And suddenly, washing wasn't vanity, it was survival. You still didn't call it bathing, though. That felt too bold, too modern. You said you were cooling the skin or steaming the spirit. You'd heat a pot, dunk a cloth, wipe your limbs quickly, like you were evading something invisible, which you kind of were. But deep down, no one really knew if it helped. The doctors wore bird masks. The priests prayed louder, but the bodies kept piling up, and the water? It still shimmered in the buckets, still steamed in the baths of the rich, still frightened the poor, because no matter how many people died, the fear never left that something dark, damp, and watching might be waiting in the warmth. So you washed carefully, rarely, because they thought bathing let demons in. But then again, so did death. You're nobody. You sleep on hay that smells like feet. You eat soup that tastes like boiled apology. You've never seen the king, and if you did, you'd probably curtsy so hard you'd snap a rib. But today, your idea might save the kingdom, and that's terrifying. It started with the well. Water's been low for weeks. People are whispering. The baker's dough won't rise. The cows look insulted every time you try to milk them. And the village healer says the stars are misaligned, which usually just means something terrible is about to happen. Then it does. A fever, fast, cruel, wet with coughs and strange swellings. You wake up and 3 people are gone. The smith, his son, and old Della, who was too stubborn to die properly, but somehow did. No one knows what to do. The Lord's messenger gallops through once with advice, pray more, then disappears. The nobles, up in their stone towers, with garlic and silk scarves tied around their faces like that will help. The peasants, you're digging ditches, lighting herbs, and sweating panic into your boots. And that's when you think of it. It's not grand. It's not clever, but it might work. You remember the marsh, far off, behind the woods, where the frogs scream like tiny devils, and the air smells like moldy tea. You remember the old stories, how marsh water draws out sickness, mostly told by drunk shepherds. But still, it's something. So you go. You wade through mud up to your knees. You catch leeches. You fight a goose. You fill 2 buckets with brown, suspicious water, whispering apologies to every saint you can name. Then you boil it for hours until the smell fades, until the steam no longer bites your nose. Then you mix in crushed nettle, Because why not? And pour a ladleful into a cup. You give it to your sister first. She's burning up. She drinks it, sleeps, doesn't cough all night. The next day, she's still alive. You try it on the neighbor, then the neighbor's kid, then 3 more sick people. It's not a miracle, but it's doing something. Word spreads. The steward hears. He sends a guard. The guard smells it, gags, and takes a bottle back to the castle. By some cosmic joke, the queen herself is ill, pale, shaking, barely able to speak. The royal physician has tried everything: bloodletting, beetles, imported dust from Spain. Nothing worked, so they give her your potion: marsh water, boiled twice, nettles, and desperation. She lives, and suddenly you are summoned. Not invited, not asked. Summoned. You show up barefoot, covered in soot. Your best shirt still smells like the fire pit. The king doesn't look at you, but the advisor does. Says, whatever you gave her, make more. And you do. For days, weeks, boiling, mixing, muttering things that sound smart. People start calling it the peasant's brew. You don't argue. They build a bigger fire, give you real tools. Not a title. Don't be ridiculous. But food, warm bread, dry clothes, and sometimes you sit by the great fire in the courtyard, watching nobles drink your ugly little soup, and you think, I was just trying to help my sister. Your name doesn't make it into the scrolls. The kingdom never builds you a statue, but the fever fades. People stop dying, and all across the land, peasants keep boiling things, keep believing that maybe their ideas matter too. It wasn't glory, but it was hope, and somehow that was enough. You were crouched by the hearth, grinding a handful of something green and slightly furry into a wooden bowl that hasn't been properly cleaned since the last good harvest. It's not a fancy recipe. It's not even really a recipe, but it's yours. And it smells, well, slightly less like death than everything else around here, which, in these parts, makes it a miracle. You mix slowly, thoughtfully, because there are rules. Too much rosemary, and it smells like someone angry roasted a chicken. Too much sage, and everyone starts hallucinating their dead uncle. Just enough time, and you might fool your nose into thinking the air hasn't been cursed. You toss in dried lavender because it makes people feel fancy. Then marjoram, because no one knows what marjoram actually does. But the apothecary once said it soothes the demons, which is vague but oddly comforting. And finally, mint, because you want people to believe, just for a second, that something clean exists. The room you're in smells like boiled feet and sorrow. It's the sick house, straw beds, coughing piles of blankets, and a general sense that death might walk in at any moment, ask for a chair, and stay the night. So you light a bit of your mixture on a clay dish, just a pinch, just enough to smolder, and there it is. That little wisp of herbal smoke, sweet, earthy, and almost brave. People notice, not right away, but after a few hours, someone sits up, someone else stops moaning long enough to say, what is that? You tell them, just something I made. You don't mention the 12 failed batches, the one that made a child sneeze for 3 hours, The one that accidentally summoned a nest of wasps. This one's different. This one works. Not in a cure the plague way. Let's not be dramatic. But in a makes the air less haunted kind of way. And in a time where the smell of sickness is everywhere, in your clothes, your hands, your dreams, less haunted feels like a revolution. Soon, people are asking for it. Not begging, not demanding, just asking, politely, like it's a favor you'd grant to someone whose cousin hasn't stopped sweating in 2 days. You start giving it away. A spoonful here, a sachet there. You show a girl how to crush the herbs. You show a boy how to light it safely. You watch them carry the scent into homes that haven't smelled like anything but fear in weeks. And slowly, the sick houses change, just a bit, still full of grief, still hard, but not as hard, not as grim, because when you walk in now, it doesn't hit you like a wall. The smell, the heaviness. Now, it meets you like a memory, a strange, bittersweet perfume of time and smoke and barely held together hope. One day, a noblewoman visits the village. Her gloves are whiter than your soul. She steps into the sick house, stops, and breathes in. What is that delightful aroma? She asks, nose twitching like a confused deer. You tell her. You hand her a pouch. She takes it with 2 fingers and a forced smile. The next week, her servants arrive, demanding 10 more of those scent bundles the peasant invented. And just like that, your little mix becomes fashionable. You're still not paid. Don't be silly. But now, people know your name, not as a healer, not as a herbalist, just as the one who made the sick rooms smell less like despair. And that's enough, because it's not about the herbs. It's about reminding people that something good can exist, even in the worst rooms. It wasn't a cure, but it was a comfort, and sometimes that's all a kingdom really needs. You're lying in a wooden tub that used to hold pickled fish. There's a faint smell of onions. Your back hurts. You're trying to relax. Welcome to the medieval spa. No incense, no cucumber slices, just buckets, bark, and boiled leaves. And if you're lucky, the water isn't shared with 3 cousins and a goat. The bath water is warm, but don't get excited. That's because you carried it, bucket after bucket, from the well sloshing all over your boots, then heated it over a smoky fire while sneezing from whatever was burning in the hearth. Was it moss? Possibly a shoe. Doesn't matter. It's warm. That's a miracle. Then the herbs go in. Not essential oils. Leaves. Real leaves. Whatever you could find that didn't look too moldy. Sage, if you're fancy. Nettle, if you're desperate. Dandelions, if it's spring and you're feeling optimistic. You toss in bark because someone's gran once said it seals the aura, and you believe it, mostly because it sounds official and you're too tired to argue. Now you soak, or try to. You're mostly just sitting in rapidly cooling tea made from your backyard. This is your spa day. There's no silence. A child is crying in the next room. The chickens are screaming at a wheelbarrow. Someone outside is chopping firewood with the enthusiasm of a man who just lost a bet. But in your mind, you're serene. You scrub your arms with rough linen and pretend it's a silk cloth from Venice. You run fingers through your hair and imagine they're rose scented. They're not. You smell like dirt and determination, and then comes the facial. No creams, just a thick smear of mud that you read was cleansing. By read, we mean overheard. Someone at the market say it once before sneezing into a turnip. You sit there, your face drying into a clay brick, while flies inspect your life choices, and you breathe. Because this is your time. You spent the entire week carrying hay, feeding people, and avoiding plague. You deserve this moment with boiled leaves in an ex-fish bucket. The mud cracks. You rinse. You pat your skin dry with a cloth that may or may not have been part of your bedding last night. You feel fresh. Sort of. Mostly, you just feel slightly less like a walking chimney. And that's the point. Because medieval spa day wasn't about luxury. It wasn't about glow-ups. It was about scrubbing off just enough of life to keep going. It wasn't comfortable, but it was yours. And somehow, that was enough. You're hunched on a stool in the corner of a bathhouse that smells like boiled feet and ambition. You're holding a quill. Your ink is sweating. So are you. You are the royal scribe. And today's assignment is to document the king's bath. Yes, his bath, because his majesty, in a rare act of whatever this is, has declared his hygiene shall be recorded for history. So, you're here, elbows pressed to your knees, ink dribbling down your wrist, trying to stay conscious in what is basically a boiling barn with windows that refuse to open. The bathhouse is packed. 2 fire boys are stoking the flames beneath the copper tub like they're fueling a dragon. 3 servants are fanning the air with palm fronds that haven't seen an actual palm tree in centuries. And some poet clearly, threw in a handful of herbs for ambiance. Now, it smells like sweaty basil and royal regret. You jot down the first sentence. The king descended into the waters with the dignity of Neptune himself. Then he slips on the first step. You make a note to cross that part out. He's in the tub now. Steam rises like a ghost with a schedule. It fogs up your glasses, which don't actually exist yet. But if they did, they'd be useless. Your quill wilts. Your parchment curls. Your spine questions its life choices. You're not sure if it's the heat or the humiliation that's dizzying you. The king grunts. Write that down, someone says. You nod. Pretend to write. You've lost all motor function in your right hand. The king lifts a sponge with great ceremony, squeezes it, misses water splashes. Onto your notes, onto your foot, possibly onto your soul. You blink, your vision doubles. The steam has become a character in this story now. It wraps around your head like a jealous lover. And then, poof, you're out. Face first into the floor, ink bottle rolling toward the nearest servant, quill stuck in your hair. They say you collapsed with dignity. They lie. When you wake, you're in a pile of linen that smells like moldy soap. A small boy offers you something that might be a turnip. You decline. The bath continues without you. Your notes are smeared, but one line remains legible. It was not grace, but it was royal, and it was very, very damp. And honestly, that's the most accurate historical record you've ever written. It wasn't glory, it was heat stroke, but somehow that was enough. You're pouring hot water into a wooden tub in the middle of a field barn. Steam rises like a miracle. A few chickens look offended. Somewhere in the distance, a cow coughs, and behind you, a group of noblemen are watching, snickering. Is that moss in there? One asks, laughing into his embroidered sleeve. You nod. For the skin. They sneer. One mutters, peasant witchcraft. Another says, next they'll be bathing in soup. They've come to inspect the peasants, observe the poor as they call it. They're dressed like stiff curtains. You're dressed like someone who owns exactly one shirt, and yet you have something they don't. Warmth, because you figured it out. A simple trick, a mix of boiled rainwater, pine bark, crushed mint, and the stubborn belief that you deserve to feel okay for once. The tub might be cracked. The air might still smell faintly of goat. But when you step in, when your skin meets the heat, your whole body sighs like it's been waiting for this moment since birth. And the noblemen, they watch closely, first with judgment, then with envy, because you're not shivering, you're not coughing, you're glowing just a little, like someone who isn't rotting from the inside out. They whisper to each other, looks relaxing. Bet it helps the joints. Maybe it's not entirely ridiculous. By dusk, they're still lingering, trying to act casual, and then one clears his throat. I suppose, he says, adjusting a cuff, it wouldn't hurt to try. For scientific reasons. You don't blink. You just pour in more hot water. He steps forward, slowly, like he's approaching a wild animal or a marriage proposal. He dips a toe, gasps. Everyone watches, and then in he goes. The other nobles pretend not to notice. Then one mutters, fine, but only for my back. Another says, just the feet. A third claims he read about this in Florence. By nightfall, they've all taken a turn. The barn smells like herbs and awkward silence. No one speaks of it the next day. They ride back to their estates in silence, their faces pink, their dignity barely hanging on by a thread. But a week later, a messenger arrives at your door. From the castle, he's holding a pouch of coins and a scroll. It reads, His Lordship requests a consultation on bath making, discretion preferred. You smile. You don't gloat. Much. Because once they mocked, but now they quietly want what you have. It wasn't power, but it was something close. And somehow, that was enough. You're kneeling in church, trying not to scratch. The pew itches. Your scalp itches. Honestly, your soul itches. But scratching is unholy, apparently. So, is smelling like you've lived in a goat shed, which you more or less have. The bishop's sermon is halfway through. He's on his third warning about vanity and damp flesh, which is medieval code for don't even think about bathing. Bathing, according to him, is the gateway drug to sin. First it's warm water, then it's clean ankles. Next thing you know, you're dancing, drinking wine, and laughing in public. He pauses mid-sentence, narrows his eyes. You freeze. Did he hear you think about soap? Because in this village, you need permission to wash more than your hands. And today, that permission is dangling by a thread woven from guilt, superstition, and the bishop's unpredictable moods. Then the coughing starts. In the back row, An old woman hacks so hard she nearly lifts off the bench. A man sneezes violently into his hat. A child wipes something alarming onto his sleeve. The bishop stares. He can smell it now. So can everyone. The congregation is a soup of sweat, smoke, cabbage, and suffering. A brave soul, possibly delusional, raises a hand. With respect, Your Grace. Perhaps a bath? Gasps. A woman faints. A chicken outside crows in alarm. The bishop glares. His jaw tightens. You prepare for excommunication or spontaneous combustion. But then he sighs, a deep, soul weary sigh, like a man who's lost a war against mildew. Fine, he says, like the word hurts. Bathe. Just once. The room is silent. Then chaos. People cheer. A toddler throws a piece of bread into the air, like it's confetti. The town's one actual bucket is immediately claimed. A pot of water is already over the fire before he finishes speaking. You run home like the world just got remade. You scrub your arms. You scrub your legs. You remember you have legs. You cry a little, not from emotion, from actual soap in your eyes. That night, the village smells different, like thyme, like ash, like weird hope. Even the bishop seems less grumpy at supper. He still insists no one enjoy it. One time only, he says. No, dancing afterward. But you did it. You bathed. With permission. You go to bed cleaner than you've been in a year. Maybe ever. It wasn't heaven, but it wasn't hell either. And somehow, for one strange, steamy day, that was enough. You're standing in the village square, clutching a half-eaten onion and staring at the notice board like it just confessed a crime. Because it has. A scandal has broken out. And not over theft or witchcraft or someone marrying their cousin again. No, this time it's about bathing. Apparently, someone did it. Twice. In 1 week. The parchment is trembling in the wind, hand scrawled and angrily pinned by the town bailiff, who clearly ran out of ink halfway through the word hygiene. It reads, Let it be known that Mistress Elsbeth of Mudhollow hath been witnessed partaking in the act of full body immersion, not once, but twice, in the same calendar week, causing concern, gossip, and unnatural cleanliness. People are gathered around like it's a miracle or a murder. She used soap, whispers the blacksmith's wife. Twice? Gasps the apothecary. Which? Mutters the baker. Or Florentine. And there she is. Elsbeth, standing by her doorway with wet hair and the calm expression of someone who knows she smells better than anyone here has in a decade. To be clear, no one hated baths. They were just nervous about them, because if you looked too clean, people assumed you were up to something. Affairs, alchemy, tempting Satan, or worst of all, trying to be better than everyone else. And Elspeth, she had the audacity to use boiled water, dried herbs, and something called scrubbing. It all started when the midwife, who was half blind and half feral, claimed Elsbeth's skin was unnaturally smooth. That was enough. An emergency town council was called. The baker, the miller, and a man who once saw a frog sneeze all gathered to investigate. She's hiding something, said the baker. No one smells like rosemary for no reason. They searched her home, found clean linens, a comb, a bar of soap carved into the shape of a lamb. Scandalous. The priest was called. He sniffed, coughed, declared her tub suspiciously large. A full bucket of warm water was brought forward as evidence. Still steaming, Elspeth stood accused of moral relaxation, folly of the flesh, and overwashing. The verdict, a warning: no more baths for a month, no more fancy herbs, and absolutely no humming while washing, as it tempted the devil. Elspeth smiled, nodded, and the next morning, people saw steam rising from her chimney again. The scandal never really died. It just became legend. Some say she started a secret bathing club. Some say nobles sent her letters begging for her rosemary recipe. Some say the soap lamb winked. What's true is this: the great bathing scandal of 1347 didn't bring down a kingdom, but it did rattle a village. And it reminded everyone that sometimes being clean was the most rebellious thing you could do. It wasn't a revolution, but it smelled like one. You're watching it happen. The bucket tips, the water pours, and it touches her arm. Real water, real skin. No gloves, no prayers, no screaming, just water. The whole village holds its breath. Even the chickens stop arguing. Because this is unheard of. Bathing is allowed, in theory, but only for holy days, childbirth, or after losing a bet. And even then, only with supervision, herbs, and a stern priest standing nearby, muttering Latin. But not today. Today, young Agnes, 12 years old, freckled, stubborn, stood in the middle of the yard, rolled up her sleeves, and splashed herself with a full bucket of water like she wasn't inviting immediate supernatural punishment. And so far, nothing's happened. No lightning, no boils, no ghost frogs. She just looks clean and vaguely smug. You hear someone whisper, "She'll be dead by morning." Another mutters, "That's how it starts. First the arm, then the dancing." You can't blame them. Everyone's been taught since birth. Water is dangerous. Not drinking it, that's fine. But letting it touch your bare skin, that's where the devil gets in. Because water opens the pores. And when your pores open, so does your soul. And if your soul's open, what's stopping it from catching something? The plague, the demons, the flu, ideas. Better to stay sealed, shut. But Agnes, wild, joyful Agnes, clearly missed the memo. She's now rinsing her neck, in full view, bold as brass, and twice as shocking. A nearby woman faints. Someone starts reciting psalms. A child cries into a turnip. The village elder approaches. Slowly, like Agnes might explode. He peers at her arm, then at the bucket. He sniffs, winces, pauses. Rosemary? Agnes nods. And a little mint? He backs away like she just cursed. His cow. Everyone's staring now. Not speaking, just staring at her damp skin, waiting for it to blister, waiting for a crow to land and whisper a prophecy. But nothing happens. She wrings out her sleeve, smiles, goes back inside, and everyone is left blinking in the silence. By morning, she's still alive, still freckled, still smug, and the next day, Someone else tries it, quietly, behind a shed, just one hand, then another, then a face, then a foot, and by the end of the week, half the village is accidentally dropping buckets. No one says it out loud, but something has changed. They thought water touching skin would kill them, but it didn't. And now, they don't know whether to be afraid or relieved. It wasn't revolution, but it was a start. And somehow, that was enough. You're standing outside, blinking like you've never smelled air before, because something's wrong. Wait, no, not wrong, just different. The courtyard, the one that's usually thick with the scent of spoiled turnips, goat breath, and general despair, now smells faintly of mint and maybe thyme. Is that lavender? You're not sure, because it's been a while since your nose encountered anything that didn't remind you of someone's armpit. But here it is, drifting through the stone archway like a rumor, clean, soft, almost hopeful. The chickens are suspicious. A pig refuses to come out of its pen. The blacksmith sniffs the air and squints at the sky like he's expecting it to catch fire. Who lit incense? Someone demands. Wasn't me, says the baker, who smells like smoke and secrets. Something's happening, whispers a shepherd's wife, clutching her shawl like it might run off without her. And she's right. Something is happening. It started 3 days ago, quietly, in the servant quarters. Someone, no one will admit who, boiled water, crushed herbs, and started washing things, not just themselves. Things, blankets, tunics, hair, a comb. The smell didn't go away overnight. You can't erase years of fermented linen in one rinse. But now, there's a shift. The courtyard, where chamber pots are emptied, onions are skinned, and people openly sneeze into the wind, smells like a garden that doesn't want to kill you. The bishop walks through, pauses, and says, "Is that basil?" A guard inhales deeply, then immediately pretends he didn't. You try not to make a big deal of it, but your lungs are confused. Your eyes don't sting. Even the flies are fewer, and people start lingering. A boy lays out drying laundry. A girl braids her hair outside, smiling for no reason. Someone starts humming, while scrubbing a bench. It's terrifying and beautiful. You catch the cook sniffing her own apron and nodding. She wipes her eyes and says, "Didn't know cotton could smell like anything but stew." And the best part, the king hasn't noticed yet, because once he does, someone's going to ruin it with a proclamation. All scent, henceforth, must come from royal candles only, or some nonsense like that. But for now, right now, the courtyard doesn't smell like rotten turnips. It smells like hope. It wasn't perfume. It wasn't rebellion, but it was something better. And somehow, that was enough. You're standing in the outer court, squinting toward the balcony where the king usually appears once a month to yell vague things about valor, grain, and keeping our enemies in the mud where they belong. It's not that the people gather for the speeches. They gather for the food scraps tossed afterward. The speech is more like a warm-up act for the leftovers. But today, something's off. The king looks different. His beard is less matted. His hair has shape. His robes aren't smeared with what might have been stew or a small animal. And most shockingly, he seems to be glistening, not sweating, glistening. He opens his mouth. The usual coughing fit doesn't happen. And then he gives a good speech, not just coherent, sharp, focused, almost inspiring. He speaks about rebuilding the bridge, about lowering bread taxes, gasps all around. He even references a local widow by name. People start whispering, is he possessed? Did someone feed him a wizard? Wait, is that a comb mark in his hair? The castle steward confirms it later. The king bathed, voluntarily, with hot water, soap, a brush, the works. Apparently, he'd stubbed his toe, yelled at a guard, and somehow ended up sitting in a bath someone else had drawn. Out of laziness or confusion, he stayed there long enough for the dirt to come off. And when he stepped out, he could see out of both eyes. He said his headache vanished, said he could think, so he wrote his speech himself. That was the moment, the turning point. One clean king, one clear sentence. And now, the royal court is panicking, because if bathing leads to better thinking, what else might change? Smarter policies, fewer executions, a queen who doesn't cry at dinner. The high priest insists this is a divine fluke. The royal tailor claims it was his new linen. The court physician mutters something about soap unlocking brain vapors. But the truth, he was just clean. And for once, that cleanliness didn't signal decadence or weakness. It signaled clarity. A cleaner king gave a sharper speech. Weird, but also kind of wonderful. You're clutching a pitchfork, ankle deep in mud, and absolutely ready to riot. The tax collector just rode through town again, smug as a goose in silk, announcing that wheat will cost more, firewood will be rationed, and the final insult. The mayor's third cousin gets a new horse. People are angry, boiling, fists are clenched, chants are brewing, but then something very strange happens. Someone says, let's wash first. You blink. What? We stink, the voice says, plainly. If we're going to burn something down, we might as well smell decent doing it. It's a fair point. You haven't bathed in 2 weeks. The person beside you smells like sadness and onions. The entire village could probably be defeated in battle by a stiff breeze. So the mob pauses. Someone drags out a tub. Someone else starts a fire. Buckets are filled. Water is boiled. You toss in herbs, not because you're fancy, but because it hides the smell of feet. Someone adds mint. Someone adds beer. By accident. It turns out nice. One by one, the villagers start bathing. Not just a splash here and there. Full, glorious scrubbing. Arms, legs, necks. Laughter bubbles up between the rinses. Even the blacksmith joins in. You haven't seen his ankles in years. Soap is passed around like gold. A child is gently dunked and emerges reborn. The midwife says, something smells like her grandmother's wedding. The fire crackles. Steam rises. For the first time in forever, the town shines. And with the stink goes something else. The anger, not all of it. You still hate the tax collector. But after scrubbing out weeks of grime, you somehow feel lighter, stronger, human. Someone brings out bread. Someone else starts playing a flute. A few of you start dancing. A bath becomes a feast. A feast becomes a celebration. A celebration becomes a revolution of its own kind, not of fire and fury, but of dignity. Because when you've been told for generations that you're dirty, that filth is your fate, choosing to bathe is not just self care, it's rebellion. And that night, the mayor arrives to find no riot, just 100 clean peasants, dancing, shining, smelling of thyme and soap and quiet power. He blinks, retreats, fast. You grin, because you know what happened. The people didn't riot. They bathed, then they celebrated. And somehow, that was enough.